With Lechesis announced as the upcoming Benediction class in Tower of Fantasy, it's time we take a dive into this role and what makes it so unique. Benediction, or more commonly known as the healer or buffer, is an important role that can influence the outcome of team games and in some instances the key to beating difficult challenging modes. To call it a healer would be doing injustice to the class, as they provide strong buffs for the DPS teammates and also shielding capabilities to help protect allies from lethal damage. As the saying goes,
prevention is better than cure.
Literally. With that said, let's get into the specifics. The Benediction Resonance is activated when you pair 2 support type weapons along with a third weapon of choice. See this description here that says increases healing and even more healing in team play? Yeah, no wonder people think of it as healers. Come on, man. Looking at the list of Benediction weapons we have, each of them brings different utilities and buffs to the battlefield, some stronger and more in demand than others. However, it will take time to complete the whole collection, so if you're new to the game, worry not. You'll collect the weapons as you go along. As a Bene, you need to understand your character like a key fitting into a lock. In other words, know your role and own it. The first priority is not healing, no. You need to be at the right place, right time, and provide your team with the best buffs you can conjure. Remember the big list of Benediction characters? Yeah, that's right. Gotta pair them well. Let's start by going through some of the meta comps in the current landscape. In most team content and endgame modes, the top performing teams are composed of 1 tank, 2 Benediction, and 1 DPS as the go-to team for the best results. 2 Benediction means there will be 6 weapons shared among 2 party members. An example of a meta setup would be Fiona, Grey Fox and Coco Ritter on 1 Bene, and another using Lyra, Brevi and Zero. These weapons will contribute to team buffs over the course of the battle. Endgame modes have bosses with tons of HP and is designed that way because of the huge damage fully buffed DPS teams can do to them. Take for example, Origin of War at 2000% will require your team to deal a sizable amount of damage to beat those bosses. Heavily invested DPS users cannot do it alone without the presence of Benediction buffs. So that's where you'll come in to contribute. Healing is the other responsibility Benediction users need to master. As much as we don't want to call them healers all the time, it's still an important role only the Bene users can do well. A lot of game modes negate healing effects, and even if our poor tanks want to try healing, they simply are handicapped to a point their heals don't matter. So do your job and make sure the party gets their heals. Each Benediction weapon in Tower of Fantasy has their own ways to heal the teams, some better than the others. Brevi's Packers Mest is widely considered as one of the best healing weapons in the game with its passive healing and on-demand heals in her skills. When pairing them with the likes of other healing weapons, well-timed Benediction rotations can ensure the HP pool of the team is always up and running. There's a lot to consider when planning your team for battles, so let's dive into the basic of team comps. There are a few general rules to consider when you set up your Benediction team. 1. It's best to have weapons that can heal and buff well. Starting out, your stats may not be that refined, so if you can trigger Elemental Resonance, it will help you perform your heals better. For example, if you pair Coco Ritter with another Frost weapon, you'll get the Frost Resonance that increases your attack by 15%, Coco, Lyra and Brevi for example. The second thing you need to pay attention to is with this kind of setup, do you have enough charge? Benediction teams, unlike our counterpart DPS, will rely on discharge for some weapons to dish out maximum buffs. You often hear DPS characters jump cancelling their discharge to skip the animation and save time, right? For Benediction, that's not always the case. Weapons like Coco Ritter's Absolute Zero and Zero's Negating Cube will need to let their discharge run its course for the maximum buffs. Other weapons such as Grey Fox Witch Key, allows you to cancel their discharge yet still retain the buffs on allies. The point is, you need a decent charge to reach maximum gauge to unleash these discharges efficiently. Enter Fiona, one of the best Benediction weapons for team support that has a wide array of skills and buffs for your team. She's also one of the altered weapons, so Fiona's designed to be long-lasting anyway. With Fiona on your team, she provides good weapon charge with her Torrential Force skill, or when you do her dodge attack, or use her Vortex skill. Combined with the likes of Kokorita and her healing bees, your charge bar fills up real fast and ready to discharge whenever necessary. For new players that want to focus on team play, it's very important you max out your support weapons. A lot of the team buffs are locked behind weapon stars, and even if you have base weapons, it's only good for basic and easier game modes. Veterans that have played Benediction for long periods of time will understand the need to have maxed out support weapons, as each weapon has their own unique buffing trait in battles. Benediction weapons do not come that frequent, and with proper planning, you will be able to max out those stars whenever the banner arrives. Third point is literally the third weapon you have on your team. Because you already have 2 support weapons making up the Benediction core, so the third weapon is a flexible choice. If the game mode is not so demanding on precise team comps, choosing any one of the buffing weapons you have will contribute to your team performance. Lyra, Fiona, Coco for example, can keep most teams alive with the amount of heals and shields generated. Grey Fox, Brevi and Zero on the other hand will also provide massive team buffs when used correctly. All these weapons can be used together or interchanged within the team depending on how the Benediction players communicate with each other. Experienced Benediction players should be able to guide newer players on what weapons to use in specific game modes. New players, don't be shy. It's good to ask the team if you're unsure what weapons to use when you join modes like Raids, FCE, Origin of War and so on. Wait a minute, what about non-Benediction weapons? There are a few non-Benediction weapons that Bene mains can choose from to support specific elemental DPS teams. Ine, Claudia, Crow and Lan are all weapons that can buff their respective elements. In some niche modes like Raids or FCE, Benediction mains can use this to additionally buff the team if the tank is not using these weapons. Lyn, with her Synesthesia 6, is another option to use if your DPS lacks attack, as her Moonlight Realm gives the team a 23% attack buff. You do, however, need an S6 Lyn for that. It's more of a choice when your main buffs are already secured and should never be chosen over one of the main Benediction weapons. Just remember, if you're not sure what to use, always talk to your team. This ain't a solo game. A big part of being Benediction is choosing the right matrices to go with your team. Benediction matrices provide some of the most powerful buffs when used correctly. What kind of buffs are we talking about? Coco's 4-piece is very strong. As long as you or your teammates receive some form of healing, all will receive a 20% attack boost at max stars. When I say some form of healing, it means even if DPS heals themselves via Titan stats, lifesteal or HP recovery, they will trigger this Coco effect buff. These attack buffs are base attack, which is very valuable given all the additional multipliers added on in team games. As long as you are able to keep this effect always on, your team DPS benefits tremendously from these matrices. Word of advice, you need to be in an approximate 10 meters distance from your teammates, and you can trigger them from half a map away. Stay close and watch your positioning. Kokorita's matrices can be stacked in the Frontier Clash Evolution mode. By using a set of 3-star Coco and pairing another 1-star or 2-star on another teammate, you gain about 37.5 attack from both the matrices combined when the effect is triggered. Whether or not this is a bug or unintended buff, one thing's for sure, you did not hear it from me, okay? Brevi's matrices boost the bonus attack of teammates by 20% at 3 stars. This matrix set can be used on any weapon as long as your Benediction Resonance is activated. You don't even need to have Brevi on the team. Interesting. This matrix effect also works in the background, so you want to place them on a weapon that is used the least. Example, Lyra in a team of Zero and Grey Fox. Grey Fox 2-piece increases all of your attack by 30% at max stars. This is very important for your healing and also Fiona's Link, where you channel 20% of your max attack to your teammates. Having 100,000 attack is a mandatory requirement in endgame challenges for Benediction players in the current meta. Grey Fox Matrices will help with that. Her 4-piece is also a game changer. When using or jump cancelling her discharge, you will increase nearby allies' crit by 20% and crit damage by 12%. We live in a society where bosses have high crit resistance, and without these effects in the team, DPS will suffer. It is important to have at least one Grey Fox user with her matrices on the team, period. Fiona's matrices are still relevant to the meta even though they may look outdated. Her 2-piece effect boosts your base attack by 22% at max stars, and the 4-piece effect gives final damage buffs to your teammates. The 4-piece set works in the background, whereas 2-piece matrices will still need you to activate them every 30 seconds by switching to the weapon and dealing damage to the target. At present, most DPS users have high elemental damage from all their gears and matrices, so buffing them final damage is beneficial to the damage multipliers until one day there's a stronger matrix set to replace Fiona's. Zero, a strong 4-piece set that buffs 28% damage at max stars to the team. This damage buff is a unique multiplier when calculated with all the other multipliers, so it is a must to have on the team. The only reason not to use it for Benediction is when you have a tank on the team equipping Zero Matrices set as well. We spoke about the meta team of 1 tank, 2 Benediction and 1 DPS. Meta tanks will usually fulfill the duty of Zero Matrices. Otherwise, Bene players will have to use them, so please do get your 3-star Zero Matrices, okay? Additional team buffing matrices include Saki Fuwa. 2-piece Saki Fuwa matrices increases frost damage taken by the target when you equip it under Frost Resonance. This is important when you run with Frost DPS teams, which also is one of the meta teams that do well in content like Limited Raids and the Origin of War. Due to the tank using Zero Matrices and this matrix set needing Frost Resonance to trigger the effect, it's suitable for one of the Benediction players to use it. The matrix effect works in the background. Just be sure you're not too far away from the bosses to apply this effect. 2-piece Nemesis matrices increase the Volt attack bonus for teammates as long as you're healing them. For example, besties on teammate will constantly heal them, and as long as your weapon has Nemesis matrix on them, they will receive the Volt attack boost. Attack boosting matrices. When your attack is not remotely near 100,000 yet, using 2-piece attack matrices is an option. Grey Fox, Void Piercer, Nanyin are the ones that add all attack regardless of element, and the respective pieces like Lechesis, Aster, Carrot, etc. will buff single elemental attack for your team. Use them if you need that attack boost to hit higher stats. 4-piece Claudia matrices are used to reduce skill cooldowns when you hit targets with your skills. Advanced team comps will use this to reduce the cooldown on Zero skill, for example, to keep the uptime of his cube damage buffs for the team. For beginners that have no better matrices, Pepper and Echo can boost the speed of obtaining weapon charge. It's really just beginner's matrix set. Meta matrices comp follow a certain pattern. In this following example of a team that uses Fiona, Coco and Grey Fox weapons, we know that Fiona and Grey Fox matrices are needed with their respective weapons, so they are mandatory. That leaves you with one more set of matrices to be used. Usually, you can do Coco matrices as the on-field option, but if you're running with a Frost DPS teammate, you might use Saki Fuwa matrices as another alternate. The other Bene teammate would use something like this: Lyra, Brevi and Zero with Brevi and double Coco Matrices for the upkeep. In this scenario, the Benedictions work together to keep Coco Matrices buff up for the team, while tanks keep Zero Matrices in effect. This is because while limited matrices mostly have the effects running in background, you want the best on-field matrices effect to stay as long as possible, buffing the DPS in battle. Think of it as putting them on weapons you use most of the time. Benediction teams also have rotations similar to DPS. You will prioritize certain weapons over the others. In a Zero Grey Fox Lyra team, Lyra will be used the least. Therefore, you'd place background matrices on her. Zero and Grey Fox would do most of the on-field buffing skills. That's where we place our Coco matrices. So whenever we swap between the two weapons and fulfill the healing requirement, Coco is activated for the team. The upkeep of matrices effects are absolutely crucial if you're doing ranking and time attacks, and even milliseconds of missing buffs will alter the final time recorded. Needless to say, it's all down to the understanding of your team plus a lot of trial and error. Practice, people, practice. Now, let's talk a little bit about rotations. Equally as important as the matrices come the weapon rotations. Sure, we all know what weapons to use. We can also follow guides like this and whip up a meta team as long as we have them. But without the proper rotation knowledge, you may be overutilizing a certain skill or missing a certain buff at a precise moment. In a team of Fiona, Coco and Grey Fox, we know that Coco's discharge is an absolute beast in terms of buffs, so we prioritize that. Fiona and Grey Fox have skills that work mostly in the background, so most of the field time is given to Coco. If you're running Grey Fox matrices, you get the instant charge when you start combat, which is great for using Grey Fox discharge and skill to buff your teammates, then swapping to Fiona for her skill and preparing yourself for Coco's discharge. Discharge Coco, let it play out and stay on Coco for about 5 to 6 seconds in order for her A3 damage and shatter buffs to take effect. This is for her discharge. During this few seconds window, you can do your dodge attack to summon the healing bee, or you can just dodge and normal attack the target. Remember we said to prioritize Coco's discharge? Before the charge reaches max, you'll swap to another weapon, Grey Fox in this case, to do some normal attacks and prepare for another Coco discharge. Once you discharge Coco again, repeat the rotation of staying on her weapon for a good 5 to 6 seconds, buffing your teammates while paying attention to the charge and weapon cooldowns. These are pretty advanced rotations that are used in endgame content when you want to maximize team buffs. It may seem daunting to new players, but over time, and the more you familiarize yourself with these rotations, you will be able to perform them to perfection. Every Benediction team comp technically has their own set of rotations, but starting out, just focus on understanding the weapon, their skill and unique abilities. Once you get a basic hang of using them in your team, you'll find it easier to build your comps according to the element your DPS needs. There aren't too many relics for Benediction mains to choose from, and the good news is, most of them are completely obtainable for free. For meta teams, the top relic choices would be the Space-Time Reef, Omnium Shield and Thalassic Heart. Thalassic Heart is a relic that is obtained via the Battle Pass, but most of the time if you're running with tanks, the tank mains would use this relic. However, as a Bene main, it is good to have one in case you do run 2 DPS 2 Benediction comps, but not a must. It's still acceptable to stick to the Space-Time Reef and the Omnium Shield. Other relics that may come in handy are the Alternate Destiny for emergency survival, Drone in case you need some resistance when your equipment is still poor, and the Jetpack for escaping crazy damage and abandoning your teammates while you're at it. I'm just kidding, don't do that! Knowing what relics to use is only the first step. Using them properly, however, is absolutely crucial to the team performance. Lots of Benediction players I've worked with tend to simply throw out what they have when the combat starts. Shields, rifts, skills, whatever. They see the boss, they press the buttons, and they hope for the best. Well-timed shields and rifts are very important for the DPS to deal their biggest possible burst damage within the Relics effect period. Each DPS has different attack patterns and burst periods, not to mention the game modes too may have some mechanics that require you to cast Relics at specific timing. Some teams will communicate the usage of Relics at specific timestamps, but those are really advanced and not something you'll see when you're starting out. The Spacetime Rift is one of the best team relics that increase the damage to those caught in the zone for a brief period of time. It's important to get this relic to 5-star as soon as possible from playing the game and farming its shards. It's also stackable in team play, so it's common to see 3 rifts used by support members in meta teams. The Omnium Shield is important for DPS as it buffs their damage whenever they pass by the shield. Simple to use, difficult to master. Anyone can just throw the shield and call it a day, but to maximize its usage, you need to know how to use the shield and when to use it. The Omnium Shield also requires 5-star to be usable. Unfortunate, but do try to max it out as soon as you can, preferably after the Spacetime Rift relic. Well-timed shields paired with Spacetime Rifts are the reasons you see the HP of bosses dropping like water. You want to place it at a degree that is sideways from the boss and not sandwiched between the tank and the target, as that will cause the aggro to jump around. I mean, it's simple. Bosses cannot see the tank, bosses see your DPS, bosses chase your DPS. Some endgame modes have mechanics that require the aggro to be fixed on fortitudes, so don't place shields that can block the vision of your boss on your tanks, otherwise some penalties like DPS loss can occur. It requires some practice to efficiently drop shields for your team. The Thalassic Heart is a relic that is similar to the Rift but buffs less damage in return for a longer duration. Usable at 3 stars, you can achieve permanent uptime as the cooldown is shorter than the relic's duration. A must to have on the team, but as I mentioned earlier, tanks usually have this covered. Usually. The other relic options are more for survivability and not direct team buffing, so it's best to try max out the key relics as soon as you can. For gears, it's not so much different from the stats of a DPS player. Element attack, and crit are all important for DPS as well as Benediction. So it's not uncommon to see DPS players performing Bene duties and vice versa, Bene mains doing the occasional attack roles. The difference is really in how familiar you are with that role. Tower of Fantasy is a never-ending journey of gear refining. At some point, you will ultimately acquire high attack stats as you progress. Weapons such as Fiona's Moonstar Bracelet require a total of 100,000 attack power for her link to channel maximum stats bonus, so aiming to reach that is a good goal to achieve. The higher attack and crit is, the more you heal as well. This brings us to the Titan gears. Aside from the obvious attack stat boost, Titan stats benefit us as they also give resistance stats on some gears, notably your boots and gloves, as crit being the highest stat will generate resistance random stats. That would give you a decent amount of resistance even on DPS stats, so you don't die so easily in painful content. It also saves you the time from building pure resistant gears unless you're a tank and want to get a pure resistance set. It all boils down to resource management, my friends. Do it if you need it. As for the Titan rare stats, you have the option to roll for some healing stats, but in my experience, they do not offer much difference as opposed to just using your weak point or normal attack DPS stats. If you manage to get a +3 increased healing when you roll for Titans, it's up to you if you want to keep it with the amplifier or not. Good to have, but not mandatory. Benediction mains have several traits they can use, but it's often tied to the weapons they use in the team. For meta teams that run Grey Fox, you have to use Grey Fox trait as it buffs the final damage of nearby teammates after using her discharge. And yes, jump cancelling counts. The other Benediction would supplement the team with Kokorita's trait as it provides an attack boost to nearby allies after using any support type weapon discharge or skill. You don't have to wield Coco's weapon in order to use her trait. Any support type weapon would do. Teams that run Lyra and Coco have found ways to jump cancel the skill animation in order to maximize the trait's effectiveness, using the skill every 5 seconds to keep the buffs on as much as they can. Pretty high level gameplay. Brevi users may use her trait if she's on the team. This trait boosts the final damage of nearby allies similar to Grey Fox, but at a lesser amount. That is why, in meta team comps, it's preferred to have one Bene using Grey Fox trait, which adds 10% final damage, combined with Coco Ritter's trait of boosting attack percentage as the more favorable combination. Brevi's trait can be used if you do not have Grey Fox, and provided there is another Coco Ritter user on the team using Coco's trait. Echo is another trait that gives a damage boost to nearby allies that is similar to what Brevi has to offer. This trait is normally equipped by the Fortitude tanks as they don't have many damage boosting options to use, so Benediction mains can focus on the other traits mentioned. If in a scenario where you don't have Grey Fox, don't have Brevi, and don't have a tank either, then yeah, Echo it is. Lyra's trait is helpful to provide hyper body to the team, but nowadays there are other classes that provide hyper body for the team through their skills, so using it as a trait seems a bit wasteful. I'd recommend choosing the other options. The Benediction role in Tower of Fantasy is super important. Meta teams have dedicated Benediction players that play their role to near perfection. I'm talking top teams that you see on leaderboards and ranking charts. They don't get where they are by slapping 2 support weapons and smashing those buttons like an arcade game. No! Great Benediction players understand their weapons perfectly and have the experience to dictate outcomes of battles. Well-timed buffs, good positioning of their units, and also the knack to predict what happens in battle instead of reactive gameplay. It's fine to start out with a lot of questions if you're not familiar with the role, because nobody is a master until they matter. This ain't rocket science. What you do need to know is you're not expected to be the best. Rather, you need to play your role and do the things your class is designed for: buffs and heals. Most veterans, like me, have played Benediction in endgame modes and time attacks for the sake of the team. And you know what? I am terrible at it. Or at least, I do better playing my tank or DPS, and that's okay. We all have our roles to play, and you'll only get better as you continue to learn and grow as a support. I'll be covering weapons and their specialties in another guide, as there's way too much to absorb in one go. Till then, hope this has been helpful, and I'll see ya in the next one.